Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Taylor Ann, and right now I am here with Parker Gabriel, the Nebraska Sportswriter of the Year. Congratulations on your accomplishment.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Of course. So this is Parker's second NSMA award, and he currently works for the Lincoln Journal-Star as a Nebraska football beat writer. So we're going to jump right into some questions here. First thing I have to ask you is, how does it feel to be nominated by your peers for this award?
Well, it means a lot. It's humbling. Obviously, I always think of it as I think a lot of people would say this, but for me, I think it's mostly reflective of the work that we do at the Journal Star as a whole, rather than just one person. We have a really good team. This sounds like stuff that as a reporter you wouldn't like to hear, cliche or whatever, but it's really true. I mean, we have people that are up and comers and sort of know how to handle the digital side of things. We've got people who have covered Nebraska and Lincoln and Nebraska athletics for a long time, and so we just got a really good team, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And then obviously recognition. It's not why you do it, but it feels good anyways.
Awesome. Well, that's a really great perspective. So the next thing I have to ask you is, what did you go to college for? What are the work experiences that led to your current position?
Yeah, I was a journalism major at the University of Wisconsin. I graduated in 2012. I was also a political science major. I actually thought I would probably go to law school, and then I bailed on that at like the last minute, 4 weeks before class started. And I didn't really know. I mean, I worked for the student newspaper, one of the student newspapers in Madison, the Daily Cardinal, for 4 years. And so, I mean, reporting was definitely on my radar screen. And I loved it while I was doing it in college. I didn't get a job at a newspaper or in reporting at all right out of school. But about a year and a half after, I talked my way into a job in Bozeman, Montana, moved out there sight unseen, and have been working at newspapers now for almost 7 years since then. So pretty fortunate to, it's not easy to find jobs, and certainly not ones like the ones I've been fortunate enough to have. So yeah, I consider myself really lucky to have been able to get in and stay in now for a few years.
You're definitely not the only sports writer or sportscaster I've heard speak to the aspect of luck in
Yeah.
their career path. So you're not alone in that. Another question I have for you is, what is your favorite part of being a sports writer?
Well, I mean, covering football, the thing is that, you're only in college football, you're only guaranteed to cover 12 games a year, maybe 13, 14, 15, depending on how successful the team that you're covering is in that particular year. And so there's nothing that beats Saturdays in the fall on the college football beat, because they just don't, you covering stuff besides games, 350 some days of the year, and only covering games on a certain few. And so I think that's the best part. I mean, I've come to really love reporting and finding stories and keeping people informed and all that. But the reason why I got into this in the first place was because I love football, and sports in general. It's not just football. It's a lot growing up enjoying sports and always relishing in being able to be in a stadium or at a ballpark or at a field or whatever. And so that's there's other stuff that's fun. Being on the chase of a big story is fun and exhilarating, extremely stressful and all that. But I mean, the best part of the job is being in a stadium on a Saturday.
Awesome. That is another great little tidbit you've given us. Another question that I have for you is, do you have any maybe tips or trade secrets for how one could improve their writing skills?
Well, I think there's a big difference, right, between writing and reporting, and the best way to become a better writer is to just do it a lot, and to read a lot. I find not like entire sentences or whatever, but like I think the more you read, the more you understand what you like and what you don't, what your own style is, and then from there, like your own voice sort of forms off of that. And so there'll be times where you're writing something and you're like, oh, that's that sounds a little bit like this author, that or whatever, it's or you come up with a story structure that maybe you saw something similar somewhere else or something like that, and then so that's writing. It's a very personal thing. You have to sort of find your own way, and so maybe that's a piece of advice in its own right, is just to don't be afraid to sort of be your own writer and be your own person, and let your voice come through, as long as you're as long as you think you're conveying what you're attempting to convey in a good way. And sometimes in journalism it has to be in an efficient way. So that's that. And then with reporting, the biggest thing I've found is just organization. The more organized you are, the better you are to know what's going on and be able to keep track of stuff. So you can be a lot of different. You can just come up a source can tip you off to something, or maybe it's because you keep yourself well organized and you put breadcrumbs together or something like that. So that's organization. And then the writing part is just about being creative and finding ways to tell stories in unique ways.
Awesome. Well, next thing I have to ask you is there a favorite story that you've covered, or maybe just a favorite story in general that you've had from being on the job that you would want to share with us?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's always, I think for the most part, I like being on the beat every day. Sometimes it gets a little monotonous or whatever. Every once in a while, something interesting or unique will crop up. A couple of years ago, the Nebraska's quarterbacks coach, his name is Mario Verduzco. He's this very sort of unique character, little Italian guy. And he has a unique way of talking about just everything as it pertains to the quarterback position. And one day he said that one of Nebraska's young quarterbacks, Luke McCaffrey, they were training something in phase 2 of his throwing motion or something like that. I was like, what's phase 2 of? Nobody knows what that is. And he said, oh, we can talk about the 5 phases of the throwing motion until your eyes bleed if you want. I was like, okay. And so then we ended up sitting in Nebraska's offensive meeting room for like 3 hours or something and talking about quarterback play. And he's had his shoes off at one point. It was, about like how a throwing, how your quarterback should have his feet. What you're looking at is talking about, there's a social psychologist, basically Richard A. Schmidt, who he's like going through the sort of like the 4 domains of learning as it pertains to quarterbacks. And, it's just like generalized motor programming and all this stuff is like this torrent of information. And so it was fun to hear him sort of in an unfiltered way talk about that. And then you have this challenge of trying to convey the creativity, but then also the method to your readers. It's not just like, it was cool for me to sit in there for 3 hours, but that doesn't do anybody any good if I can't like take that and turn it into something that people can learn something from. So then the challenge of taking 25 pages worth of transcript and turning it into like a functional story in its own right was fun. And I don't know if it turned out well or what, but I thought it was interesting. So
yeah, it's definitely a unique story that not a lot of people have the
yeah
experience to be able to participate in something like that. So one of my final questions for you would be, do you have any recent or advice rather for a recent college graduate looking to get into your line of work?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that this is the case, but almost universal. It's going to take some patience and it's going to take some stick-to-itiveness to do this. In the whatever I'm getting old, so this is several years ago now, but when I graduated from college, I was applying to jobs left and right, and a lot of them, like there was a stretch of, I don't know, 6 months or 8 months or something where literally, like I don't can't tell you how many jobs I probably applied for all over the country, and the only one that I even heard back from was someone who was nice enough to respond and tell me that a position had been frozen, so like, and there was they had no idea if they're ever going to fill it again or not. And so and then one day I had applied for a job, and one day after I applied, the sports editor called me and said, this is the first job I've been tasked with hiring, but I want to hire you. You want to move across the country in a couple weeks? And I was like, well, sure. And so there was a lot of unanswered applications and a lot of that. And I'm, I guess, in a little bit of a different place now, not at the outset. And so I don't know. I'm assuming that it's like that or worse at this point. And so, it just is like, if it's something you want to do, keep at it, keep working at it. You'll find someone that believes in you or thinks you're good or likes your style. I mean, sometimes it's that simple, right? I mean, there might be one place where they're maybe looking for something else, and there's another place where you fit what they're looking for to a T. So keep at it, and then just find as many ways as you can to sort of like keep working at whatever it is, you see as your skill set in the meantime too, because there's a lot of, I was a corporate governance analyst. That was what I actually did as a job. And then I was working for a blog on the side in Madison. And it, so I paid the bills and kept writing a little bit. And then suddenly I've now worked at newspapers for 7 years. So, it can be done. And it's not always going to be going from an internship at the Washington Post to working for, the Athletic or something like that. Like, there's a lot of ways to make it. But it requires a long patience and sometimes a lot of determination to make it stick.
So for you personally, how did you remain with that patience and keep your motivation up during that interim period?
I was having a lot of fun, honestly. I mean, I had a good job, a job outside of journalism that I thought was interesting. And then on top of that, like I lived in Madison. My apartment was literally through the parking lot from the Kohl Center. And I had a couple of friends of mine from college had a blog they ran that covered EW. And so we got a bunch of guys that, people that write about hoops, but nobody that actually lives in Madison. So if we get you a credential, will you cover home games for us? And I was like, yeah, I mean, come home from work, change, and head over to, the Kohl Center on a Tuesday night in January. It sounds like fun to me. And so I started doing that, and just, happenstance, right? But they ended up, I covered a Final Four, and they had a interesting year and all that. And so I think that's sort of like, not only was that motivation, but I just sort of was like, okay, I don't know if I can really handle this being like the side thing. I think that I just might have to do this. And I was fortunate enough that at that point, I sort of had this, like, I had a job I liked, I had a blogging gig I liked. And so I could just sort of ride that until something else popped. And it took a long time, but eventually it did.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Gabriel, for taking the time and speaking with us today.
Of course.
I definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure our viewers did as well. But thank you so much for everyone for watching.